My name is Rory Blair, and I'm here to talk to you about a journey that I took. And actually, honestly, I started this presentation last week from the ground up, and so it's going to be some rough spots here. So bear with me, please. So I decided, since I have only a week, I'll tell you a story of a journey that I took, since I know it well. And it's a journey of becoming a participant in each open source project. Perhaps I can give somebody some insights on what kind of motivation that I had, and maybe they'll see it in themselves or in others. So I need to give you some context. This project makes maps. Map making is an ancient human tradition, and there's a lot of knowledge and practice which basically builds certain barriers around the practice of making maps. People expect things to be done in a certain way. Well, my journey starts in the early 70s. I was born, and I started liking maps right away. I loved globes. Later on, I got into games and fiction, and whenever there was a map involved, it really increased my understanding and love of that particular work. During the same time, elsewhere in the world, computers were being used to make maps better. In University of Washington, they developed mathematical algorithms to do projections. GIS was developed at the National System in Canada. Harvard came up with spatial operations research. And some companies actually profited from this research. For instance, Esri's main product came from that very research at Harvard. This research was so complicated that it built more walls around this area. And I felt that some of these products were harder to use and costed more than they really needed to. When I first got my job as a GIS programmer analyst, this really impacted me to begin with. I felt these tools really could have done more to bring understanding to people who used maps using computers, but really didn't. I couldn't really satisfy that desire though. I moved on. I decided to go somewhere to build dashboards to visualize data in new ways. And this actually was an experience that tore down a wall, which allowed me to later participate in the open source library. Well, I went back to rows and columns with accounts and transactions, but I still dreamed about maps. I thought about a map Oregon, which looked at sunrise and sunset times throughout the entire state in 1-minute increments. This would enrich my participation in a yearly fast. So this sounded like a worthy project. I started hacking on it. My project budget was $0, so I started looking at open source software, of course. I was a little bit disappointed though. There was kind of a patchwork of libraries which really didn't give me a full solution. There was one which stood out, which was called SharpMap. Later on, I got a job here in Corvallis, closer to home, and we were actually going to integrate mapping with the product. I looked at the usual suspects, but again, I just felt there was a lot of lacking. And so perhaps SharpMap would be a solution for us. Perhaps I was a little over-optimistic though. Soon, I was participating in the library, and right after that, the person who initiated the project left to Esri to make more money. And he looked for somebody to replace him while I raised my hand. Then there was a honeymoon period. Producing demo applications was great. It was fast, the demos looked wonderful, we could integrate our data, it was open source, so we could modify it as we needed to. Well, unfortunately though, that didn't last too long. There was certain functionality which was missing, and we decided to go and add it. We wanted to do some interactive mapping, so people could tease data out of their maps. And we also wanted to embed the GIS data right in our application. This development work was pretty expensive and painful. Also, because I was a coordinator, I felt a certain responsibility to the community. A lot of people wanted to use this library, but they had a lot of questions which I really didn't have the capacity to answer. These two forces really forced me to look at learning a lot more, and there was a lot to learn. There was a lot of math. There was some esoteric data structures and algorithms. No wonder this was a niche library, I thought to myself. And pretty much I got in over my head. And so, eventually, my company decided to go with a commercial product, and somewhere along the way I was committed to this open source, so I stuck with it. But can I stick with it? It's 500,000 lines of code, which is an awful lot. The users who are novice give me frequent headaches, but I had a vision, and this vision is what helps propel me yet today. Right now, as you can see, we can make maps that display what people want to see fairly easily, but I think we can go more. I think we can thrive. We can present ideas to people in new ways. Currently, as you can see, we're surviving pretty well. There are projects all over the world that are using SharpMap right here at OSU. The Senior Capstone Project used it for 2 years in a row to develop a Code 3 Sim. And unfortunately, though, I think that other open source libraries are ahead of us. For instance, if they wanted to develop a sunrise sunset time map for Oregon, they could do it pretty easily. I, given the platform that I desire, can't do it without a lot more investment into the SharpMap library. So, if my journey will continue, I need to think about these things. I need to think about funding now. I need to think about IP and copyright. But if my journey doesn't continue, at least it's open source. And at this point, somebody else can begin their journey of participation on this library. Thank you.